Hi, everyone. I'm Makenzie Peterson. I am the Director for Wellbeing at the American Association of Veterinary Medical Colleges. So, of course, veterinary medicine, a lot of people are like, oh, veterinary medicine is so great. You get to work with animals all day. And actually, it's a mix, right? Like I'm not a veterinarian. I get to actually work with so many veterinarians. But I'll confess, as a kid, I definitely wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to save all the big cats, and I had all the zoo books, and I wanted to travel the world. And actually, very few veterinarians get to do that. And a lot of it is actually, companion animals, navigating, more of that one-on-one with, dogs, cats, household pets. And there's also large animals. There's the farm animals. There's also food production in America, keeping food safe and healthy for all of America. Agriculture. There's a lot of amazing things that are part of the health of the veterinary profession, right? But within this, within any profession, I think particularly within the health professions where we are helpers, right? I'm a health promotion, health education person. I'm a public health person. All of this is because we go into the health professions because so many of us love to help people. And one thing that we find is that if we're so used to helping others, sometimes we're not as used to helping ourselves or knowing that we need help. And if we figure out that we need help, man, how do we ask for that? And so actually, let's talk about this help-seeking process, right? One, we know that we kind of have to go through, there's been so many studies actually done on help-seeking. And usually help-seeking there's a process that's in about 4 stages. One is this awareness and appraisal of the problems. Maybe you've had this moment where you're sitting down and you're suddenly thinking, I think this isn't normal. What I'm experiencing isn't normal. This is bigger than just an inconvenience. This is actually, I think, might be a problem. You have an ability to recognize those symptoms and that you have a problem that may require an intervention beyond just what you can do. So that's the first part of that phase. The next phase is usually it goes into this expression of symptoms, this need for support. This awareness is able to be articulated. You're able to really show that you understand kind of the root of that. And I'll say, you don't have to understand it fully. You just got to be aware of it. And you also want that help, you as the help seeker to feel comfortable actually being able to verbalize it, right? You got to be able to say, I need help. And then that third phase is there's this availability of resources, right? For help seeking, for the help seeking process to happen, there needs to be available resources. It's a bear. When we get there, we're at that place where I think I'm realizing I need supports, I need help. And then we find that maybe we have an availability issue or an accessibility issue, and maybe we don't understand or even know what is available. So then we feel overwhelmed by trying to go through that hunting process to find the support that we need. And then that last phase is that there's this willingness to seek out and disclose to that. The resources could be available. They could be there. You could have a person sitting right across from you going, do you need some help? And you sit there and be like, I'm fine. It's fine. We're fine. It's okay to say you're not fine. You don't have to always be fine. So having that willingness. So actually, let's talk about that barrier, right? Let's go into this idea of like, what are barriers to preventing people from seeking help? Also, tons of research has been done on that too. And so there are some key themes in these barriers for people who are wanting to seek for help, such as all of us, right? Everyone gets through life with some help. So it's not only those people need help, all of us need help. And there's things that we don't do. So stigma and embarrassment is one of the biggest barriers, right? It's the most frequently reported of all the barriers. There's this public perceived and self-stigmatizing attitude around mental illness or needing any sort of help that tends to create an embarrassment or a fear of identifying as having a mental illness or identifying as I can't do this all on my own. We have, I think in American culture, I'll say, we have this deep-seated idea of rugged individualism that you've got to pick yourself up by your bootstraps. If you can't do it by yourself, then you didn't earn it. That is not an appropriate or even, frankly, a realistic viewpoint of how people get through life, right? That's just not true. So within that, it's that stigma and embarrassment is a very general concern that, many have, including the source of help. They think even the people that they ask for help may judge them. And so they wonder what they'll think. And that could be said in statements such as, this idea that because you can't see it, it's not real. If you're struggling internally, that's an invisible struggle. So it's like, unless I'm in physical pain, I don't need to go seek for help. That's a common sort of viewpoint in a way that many have. There's also this barrier around, there's problems even recognizing symptoms. That's kind of referred to as poor mental health literacy, right? Not knowing the symptoms, not being aware, so there's a lot of actual psychoeducation that goes around health promotion. How can we help people understand what the common stressors are? And so it's frequently reported that people simply just don't even know how to identify when the difficulties that they're facing are beyond their normal threshold of stress. And I remember there was one study reported that people were aware of their distress, but what they did, and I think you're going to resonate with me, viewer, but they continuously altered their definition of what was normal distress to avoid seeking help. The goalpost kept moving back and back and back, till eventually it got to a space where they're like, I think you all maybe have seen that meme of the dog in the house with like fire all around, like, this is fine. And that's exactly a perfect representation of this idea of, we are just going to keep moving the goalposts when it comes to distress. This is normal distress, distress is not normal. Stress is normal, distress is not normal. And so those are the things we really want to, I think, maybe be cognizant of, is we need to educate ourselves around what are the symptoms of us having distress. And as I mentioned before, one of the third barriers is this preference for self-reliance, right? I actually was having a conversation with a friend about this, embarrassingly just last night, about a different aspect of life, but it was this idea of, I made this choice to do X, Y, and Z. It's not going as I wanted it to. I made this decision, I made my bed, I'm going to lie in it, right? That sort of viewpoint. I got myself into this, I'm going to get myself out of it. I think you can already hear how maybe we understand that thought's going through our head, but we know that that's just not fair. It's not accurate. We know intellectually it's wrong, but we can't, almost because of our society is saturated in this idea of self-reliance. It's a consistent factor in both of plenty of qualitative and quantitative research that there's this trend that people prefer to rely on themselves rather than seeking outside help for their problems that they're facing. And it's often, people unfortunately tend to view it often as an indicator of weakness, or that they're not capable of dealing with the quote normal problems of life. Thing is, we were never meant to go through this alone anyway, right? So that's a barrier. And there's two more. There's confidentiality and trust. So this is actually a pretty big concern for many people. There's a lack of trust, with the respected source or the potential source of help. Is this one I can go to? Can I count on this? I'm already going through so many hoops to get there. Man, is it actually going to really help? So there's this fear of a breach of confidentiality. They don't want to go to HR. They don't want to go to their supervisor or their boss. They think that might leave them exposed. Maybe they have distrust of the credibility or the authenticity of mental health providers. Maybe there's perceptions of judgmental attitudes that only certain people need to go to therapists, or, well, no, I'm not that bad that I need to go to a therapist. Like, right, you only have to be that bad, which actually you can go to a therapist for anything you want to do. And also I think there's a lack of familiarity of, around the aspects of, what are the different types of help that are available? What is the confidentiality involved in that? And those are all things that can be addressed with questions. Just ask the questions. You can call and be like, oh, what's your process with this? How do people address this? We can address those in a variety of ways. The last barrier that we've seen in research is the sense of hopelessness. It really this idea that feeling or perceiving hopelessness, it was a very strong contributor to kind of people's negative effects, this constant pattern where the person's level of distress the higher their distress, the less likely they are to access help. And so it tends to result in this place where people think, I'm so beyond help, there's no one that could help me. No person or support service could give me what I need, right? That sense of hopelessness. And so, of course, that's pretty further along the way. And we really hope that we can intervene and help people get the help that they need and seek out that help that they need before that happens. So we've talked about the barriers, right? Now let's talk about what are those individual factors that actually they facilitate help-seeking behaviors, right? And these are actually far less comprehensive. It was really straightforward. There's three key factors, from research that's shown what facilitates positive help-seeking. One, positive past experiences. And when I say past experiences, it doesn't necessarily have to be around mental health. It can be around you sought help and you got the support you needed. So there were several studies that investigated the facilitating factors, right? That report that if you had positive past experiences of help seeking or getting support, that was a huge influence on if you would seek help in the future. And this also was inclusive of mental health. It was inclusive of services, and knowledge just from people refer back to their earlier memories of help seeking. Right. And that's actually a wonderful mechanism that a lot of mental health providers do when encouraging resilience in their cultivating resilience in their clients, is this idea of, well, can you think back to a time where you experienced something similar and you got the help that you needed? And they're like, yeah, actually I can. And that is, it helps train our brains to go back to a place where I was in distress before, I got the help I needed, and I was able to move beyond that distress. Same sort of thing. Be able to reflect back on those positive past experiences and remember that help was possible then, it happened then, and it can happen again. The second one is that social support and encouragement from others. We, again, are not isolated creatures operating on an island in a vacuum with no influences from any friends, any family, or work, right? And these influencers, they can be your parents, a partner, a loved one, a supportive professional network. A lot of those things in our social circles can really, one, model positive rule seeking, but also two, can really encourage us to really seek out the help that we want. And just to be clear, not all partners, friends, and parents, or your coworker, they can't be your therapist. They can't help you heal from trauma if the distress you're experiencing is from maybe things from your past, maybe things in your present, because, really truly look to folks who have the skills and the abilities to help facilitate healing for you. And of course, you're going to have your support network. They're going to love you. They're going to root for you. They're going to be a listening ear and be a support during tough times. But they don't have the skill to help heal trauma or to help heal some hurts. So really be thoughtful about, why do we not just go to our immediate social networks? Great for encouragement, great for social support. Let's go to the right folks, the folks that actually can help us down what sometimes is a messy, sometimes rocky, but always really, really good work. It's good work. We're investing in ourselves. So it's also been interesting that, people who were observed to be more likely to seek or recommend a friend were also more likely to seek help themselves. So it's a good circle. And then the last theme that we have is that there's emotional confidence, that there's a mental health literacy. One of the most important factors in help seeking was people having the ability and the confidence to identify and articulate their emotions and their ability to recognize and understand the symptoms of mental health difficulty. They could notice that I'm not sleeping well, or I'm sleeping tons. Maybe I'm leaning more on substances than I used to. Maybe I'm self-medicating with a variety of other things. I'm losing interest in activities I used to really enjoy. I'm disconnecting from my support network, or I'm not feeling the desire to connect intimately with my partner. Those are all symptoms and signs of that there is some measure of emotional or mental distress. And when we know it and we can articulate it, We can't, in our ways, almost pretend that like it's not happening, right? There's that emotional confidence that I can identify what's going on and I understand that I'm experiencing difficulty. Now there's this idea, so we know it on the individual level, right? Now within that, as health professionals, we operate in workplaces, right? And so many of us operate within health, clinical settings. Maybe we work with a small group of people. Maybe we work with huge, massive department or service. But ultimately, there are things that our environment does that can either encourage us or discourage us. Our workplace gives us messages. The policies, the systems, the supports and resources that they offer all give us messages about what is appropriate and not appropriate, or accepted or unaccepted behaviors, you could say. So let's say you all are in your health professions, you're going through and you are deciding that, you know what, I really want us to have a really supportive workplace when it comes to help seeking and mental health. So what can your workplace do? So there's a couple different things that we can show that we encourage help seeking in others. The first and foremost is normalize people talking to trusted friends, to counselors, to therapists, to calling or texting helplines. It's really important that we normalize help-seeking behaviors. We really, really want to do that. And part of that is modeling it ourselves. We don't hide that we're seeking help. It's like, I was having a really rough time during XYZ time, and I was really grateful that I, signed up to see a counselor during that time. It seemed silly in the moment. I thought that maybe I was just wasting their time, but I found that when I was there in that room, I really had a lot to say, and it was really helpful, right? Like it's just a way that you can say you used it in the past, or maybe use it sometimes now, or maybe use it consistently and regularly now. I love the folks who say, yeah, I consistently see a counselor and I take medication, and that's part of my self-care, right? That right there, I think, lowers that feeling of, am I the only one who needs help? You're not. You're not the only one that needs help. We all do. There's also this premise, other things that can be done, avoiding perpetuating these stereotypes about mental illness, that mentally ill people are all going to end up homeless, losing their jobs, they're just going to be unemployed, that's really harmful. It's really stigmatizing, right? It's very harmful. There's plenty of successful, fantastic people who manage their mental health. Maybe it's a chronic mental illness, maybe it's not, but either way, those are really harmful, I think, stereotypes around mental illness. And they put up the impression that you don't function. And there's actually lots of people who function very well. So that's one thing that we need. And within that could be about avoid using stigmatizing language like crazy, psycho, lazy, freeloader. Those are all things that we might want to really caution using. And also, we don't allow our coworkers, we don't allow our clients, we don't allow others to utilize that language either. We say, hey, come on, let's not do that. You know what? I don't think that we should make that assumption about someone, whatever it may be. So another thing that we can do is we can support and encourage people to develop that care plan, right? A lot of folks kind of don't make one of those until, caca hits the fan. And truly, you got to kind of have a plan. And because when you're in a rough spot, you may not be thinking of a plan. You may be thinking of what you need right now, which is great, because that's probably what the brain's like, we got to think about what we need right now. But if you have a care plan that you can look to, and it doesn't have to be written on a wall and laminated or anything like that, but it just sets out, you just have identified and been thoughtful of, when I'm feeling really down in XYZ, I know that I need to call so-and-so, and I've already arranged with them that if I need to have a call, they're going to pick up because they know that I'm having a hard time right now. Maybe you've established other sort of things. You're like, I know that if I'm starting to feel down, I'm really going to get into, maybe it's someone who has a creative side, and they're like, I'm going to just get into my drawing. I have a sibling, she's a fantastic illustrator. And so, drawing is actually a really soothing thing for her when she's feeling really frustrated. And so there's things that, we can do when we talk about this care plan. Who are we going to seek out? Who are we going to call? Ghostbusters. I don't know if that's ever not going to go through my head. I think the younger generation doesn't have it, but I still do. And so, what do we do and what's our plan when we feel like we start to become unwell? another part of this is, in your workplaces, if you have any sort of influence or leadership role, having resources available, communications material, include resources in your emails, in your links. Have printed out resources available so that people can take them home and read them in private. There's also, refer people to online resources and fact sheets. That can also be help if you want to reduce paper handouts, things of that nature. Within that, you also want to recognize that making that initial phone call can be really hard for someone. It can be really, really hard. I'll confess, years ago, I did that too. I had to make a call for the first time, and I never had to call before. And yeah, I had a lot of things that went through my head. And I remember it was really, gosh, how can I put that? It was nerve-wracking, but almost like falling on a bed of pillows too, because I was like, I need help. And someone said, absolutely, we're here. That right there meant more to me in the moment than anything else. That I was reaching out, and the call that I made to the appropriate resources was like, yes, we can help you. Let's make an appointment for you to come in. So that was sort of the things that I really just valued and appreciated. If you can recognize that call is sometimes really hard. If you have a friend who's really struggling making that call, ask for permission to forward them the details about a service that can support them or help them. Maybe you can make an email introduction to the right person. And so just anything that you can do to help take down that barrier of, let me just get you to the right resource, right? Because that was one of the barriers that we noted, right? Was, I just don't even know where to go. I don't know who would be a trusted person. This is one way that you can kind of help reduce that barrier. And also, ultimately, in a workplace, if you're the supervisor or the manager, don't make promises that you can't keep. Encourage and offer help when you know that help will be available. Be aware of some of the eligibility requirements before you refer people to some services, so you don't set them up for disappointment and frustration. If people don't have health insurance, don't send them to a place that only takes health insurance. If they can only pay a small amount, finding resources that work on a sliding scale or offer free resources. Those are the sort of things that I think we need to be really mindful of when we talk about mental health resources. Not everyone can afford that $200 an hour psychologist. I cannot. It's just not, those are the things that we need to be really mindful of. Mental health support in America is not easy and it's not cheap. So, looking at your benefits, looking at your offerings that you have in your workplace, how can you amplify those? How can you magnify them and really, truly make them more accessible? Within that, we also, you're going to have to be aware of cost, location, restricted opening hours, cultural literacy, stigma, because, of course, a lot of different cultures look at mental health, look at death, look at suicide. They look at a lot of these things of grief and loss very differently. A lot of spaces look at it through a lot of different lenses. So you really want to have that cultural literacy that allows people to access the care that they need in ways that really resonate with them. So just really try to make those resources as inclusive as possible. And lastly, as I mentioned a little bit earlier before, please model help-seeking behaviors, and not only for mental health concerns. Model them for any common challenge that we all have: stress, divorce, loss. These are all things that absolutely can impact us. And how do we seek help in those moments? So really normalizing that, being a model that people can look to. I feel honored and so grateful that there's people who reach out to me and say, I am really looking for some support. I think you seem like someone I can ask for help from, or you can get me to the right person. And I'm like, absolutely, I can get you to the right person. So there's so much that can be done. I hope that folks realize and recognize that there's so much available. And maybe that doesn't feel like that way all the time. I promise you, it's available. We need to amplify our mental health literacy. We need to identify our resources, know what's available, And honestly, make that leap, make that first phone call, and ask for the help you need if you need to make that call. Okay. So thank you so much for being with me, talking with me about this idea of encouraging help-seeking behaviors. We know that we want to really reduce those barriers, really mitigate those, and really help people go through this help-seeking process and have workplaces and environments that support folks. So thank you again. Again, I'm Makenzie Peterson, Director for Wellbeing at the American Association of Veterinary Medical Colleges. And I give you my most heartfelt be well.